Hello to Denmark, hello to Copenhagen, welcome Lena Nyhus. So please tell us what's going on in Denmark. Intact Denmark is so busy in the debate about children's protection, and in your country has been so huge discussion. It has been for the last month and even years now. Nowhere else in the world so permanently also discussed in the media. Please tell us about this, Lena.
Well, we formed Intact Denmark in 2013, and since then we've had headlines every week, and sometimes many headlines, sometimes many TV segments. And what's happening is that we have been challenging the politicians to deal with the issue of genital autonomy. And 3 years ago, we introduced a citizens' initiative, which is some people think it's a petition. It's not. It's a political initiative that allows us to propose legislation directly in the parliament. And since then, the Danish governments, 2 different governments, have tried to close us down, and American governments, different lobbying organizations, but we're still going strong. And by May 18th, our citizens' initiative should be voted on. And I have to say, it may fail. I'm not saying that it will necessarily be a success by May 18th. But if it fails during the vote, then we have another few ideas up our sleeves. So we will keep going strong.
Very interesting. Please tell us, how does the government in Denmark react?
Well, the Prime Minister, who was Prime Minister when we proposed our citizens' initiative, he said that would most certainly not happen while he was the Prime Minister. So we said to him, then we would have to, elect other politicians. And he's not the Prime Minister anymore, but we still have our citizens' initiative going on. The current Prime Minister, she appealed to the public. She went public on Facebook and in different newspapers and on television, and said that she felt that legislating against circumcision, non-therapeutic circumcision, would be would bring certain references from the Second World War to life. So she was very concerned. What was interesting was that she was only concerned with the non-therapeutic circumcisions regarding Jewish boys. And in Denmark, we have less than 10 non-therapeutic circumcisions of Jewish boys every year, or boys to Jewish parents, I should say. Whereas we have probably more than 3,000 non-therapeutic circumcisions altogether. So it was a very odd statement from the Danish Prime Minister, but it hasn't been the oddest statement. We've had some very, very interesting confrontations.
Yeah, but in the parliament, the members of the parliament, do you know their opinions about that? I think that's very important to learn.
Yeah, the thing is that in Denmark, almost 90% of the public supports legislation on this issue. And it's almost the same thing in the parliament. But the leadership in the 2 major parties, we have currently, I think, 11 parties in parliament, but the leadership in the 2 major parties have strong-armed their members, so they're not allowed to vote according to their own opinion. And until they're allowed to vote according to their own conscience, it will be difficult for us to get a majority in parliament. So at the moment, it's 2 people in leadership in 2 different parties who are in our way. Okay. And, well, we'll just have to change their opinions then.
Am I understanding well, the members of the parliament partially are not allowed to vote freely on a human rights issue? Is that true?
Well, they're choosing to surrender their right to vote freely because, of course, according to the Constitution, they always have the right to vote freely. But in this case, they choose to follow the leadership, even if they don't personally agree with that route.
Okay, so that might be very interesting if we knew intern things in that parties, because normally members of the parliament don't like if they are forced to vote against their conscience, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we do have quite good contact with members of all parties, and sometimes we do get a very good peek into what happens in the different parties, and they don't like it. And every once in a while, that happens to spill over into the media. So actually, it has been covered in the media that there's internal discussion and strife because people feel forced on this issue. And a few candidates have said in the upcoming local elections that they will be representing different parties because they simply cannot belong to a party that allows genital mutilation of children.
I see. And if I understand right, your citizen initiative is not to ban circumcision, but to install a minimum age, as it is normal for many things that are difficult to understand for children, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think it's a very big difference.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
So it is an 18-year gender neutral age limit we want to introduce so that we can protect both boys and girls and intersex children from non-therapeutic genital interventions.
Yes. Lena, please let us talk a bit about your organization. The way it was founded, because I know you very well. We met a few times, and I think you have so interesting members in your organization. It's such a multicultural group, and please tell us a bit about this, because sometimes there are prejudices from outside that say that who are behind these organizations, what are their motives, and so I think we have to put out very clear always who are we, and which experiences have gave us the impulse to speak out about a very tabooed and personal issue.
Yeah. Well, we formed Intact Denmark in 2013. And we did that because several Jewish and one Muslim man had come forward during 2011 and 2012. And they had told about their experiences about being involuntarily circumcised as children. And they had urged the nation to intervene with legislation and parents to stop that. And that started the discussion going. And of course, a few people had discussed this even years before that. For instance, adjunct professor Morten Frisch had been working for 10 years prior to that. So he was an absolute senior. And he's not a member of Intact Denmark, but he was very much an inspiration when we formed Intact Denmark. So by 2013, we were a group of, I think, 25 people. Some of us with Jewish background, some with Muslim background, some with Christian background. Some of us are believers, some of us are not. I'm most certainly atheist. And some of us had lived through genital interventions, non-therapeutic interventions, and others, like myself, are allies. So it was a multicultural group. It was different genders, different age groups, practically all the political spectrum, except I think for the very far right, because our organization is much too multicultural for racists to be part of it.
That wouldn't fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely not.
We have had a few people who turned out to be racist who did show interest in Intact Denmark, but it's just not as you say, it's just not a good fit. So they're not members. And at this point, the organization has about 700 members, and it's growing every day. So we're very proud to have that size by now. And I think by the end of the year, we'll probably be over 1,000 members would be my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. One other point I find so interesting in the Danish debate is the way the media report about it. I think this is also absolutely unique worldwide. So huge articles daily, sometimes several articles daily. You're present in state TV on prime time. Men affected tell their stories. So please tell us a bit, how does that work? Because, for example, the W.W. Doga has today 9th birthday, and not one single German journal has ever wrote a fair article reporting to people what this day is about, so that people can choose their own opinion about what we're doing. And so what I see in Denmark is so absolutely different that I sometimes can't believe what I see. What's going on in Denmark? That this is possible to talk about that openly.
Yeah, it is a very unique situation. I think one thing has to do with culture. We have a culture where we don't have many taboos. So it's possible to talk about difficult issues, controversial issues, sexuality, even on, morning primetime TV. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. But another thing is that we have a skill set that allows us to bring these issues to the media's attention. So when we first formed Intact Denmark, we made a very conscious effort to make sure that we would get media attention. We made an analysis of where we were politically and culturally in Denmark and where we wanted to be, and which tools also in terms of public attention would be necessary to get to our goals, get to where we want to be. And then we set about contacting the media again and again and explaining to them why the story that we want to tell would also be beneficial for them to tell. Why would it give, more clicks, more attention, more readers, more money? What would it bring to the table? What would be the newsworthy story? And I think for each time we might pitch 100 ideas, but we only get one article. We just pitch a truckload of ideas. So we don't send out many press releases or anything like that. We very much work personally with the different editors in order to pitch them stories. And if they're good stories, they end up writing them or filming them.
Very interesting. And I think something that really makes obvious how much you are taken serious in the debate is the fact that you have been invited into the US Embassy.
Twice.
Twice even. Yeah. If you like, please tell us about how that happened and the way you were in contact there.
Yeah. We were contacted a few years ago in, I think, 2016, and asked to meet with the US Embassy to tell them about Intact Denmark and what we're trying to achieve and how we achieved it. And it was our current Vice President, Michael Achter, who had that meeting, and it was very, calm and collected, and I think mutually interesting to both the political officer that he was talking to and to Michael as well. And that year we thought, this is going to be the biggest thing for Intact Denmark this year. But actually we were also approached by the UN. So they sent a special envoy to Denmark, a special rapporteur on religious freedom. So he made a report about religious freedom in Denmark and about non-therapeutic circumcision in particular. And I think he had an idea that we were terrible human beings before he met us. But after that, he told us and told the press that, we might come to different conclusions, but his impression was that we genuinely wanted the best for children. And my impression is that goes for him as well, even though he feels that non-therapeutic circumcision is a good thing. I don't have any negative things to say about him. But what happened in 2018 was that once we launched the Citizens Initiative, everything went bananas in Denmark. Suddenly we had closed sessions in the parliament involving 6 ministers: the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Religious Rights, Children's Rights, health, all sorts of things. And then in the middle of all that, we were giving interviews, 15 to 18 interviews a day. The telephone was ringing off the hook. The email inbox was glowing. And one of the callers was from the American Embassy. And she wanted us to show up within, I think, 36 hours. Or maybe it was even 24 hours. But we said no. We said, we would love to talk to you. We want to talk to everyone who wants to talk to us about non-therapeutic genital surgeries, but we don't have the time right now. But she was very insistent, so we said, okay, we can meet with you in 10 days. And that was, I don't think the American Embassy is used to being on other people's time, but that was just the way it was. So when we came to the meeting, which was very odd because it was taking place at this noisy cafe because the embassy was being rebuilt at the time, one of the first things that was said was, what would it take to make you withdraw your Citizens Initiative? And I have to say, I was flabbergasted and absolutely furious. I wish I would have asked, what are you offering? But
that's what I would ask as well.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
We didn't. It was Mikael, my vice chair, and myself, and we didn't think to ask that question. What we did tell them was 3 things. We told them, first of all, we want an 18-year gender-neutral age limit for genital surgeries. And until that's introduced, we're not withdrawing from anything at all. Secondly, had you done your homework, you would know that once a Citizens Initiative is published, not even a comma or a spelling error can be adjusted. So before you interfere with Danish politics, you should really check the legislation. And thirdly, the USA should not interfere in democratic processes in other countries. This is a completely legit democratic process, and we're a small NGO. We don't have any significant funding. We don't have any paid staff or anything. So I think it was very, very rude for them to interfere. And then we got into a huge discussion about human rights and genital hygiene, which was the thing they were very preoccupied with. And then they started lecturing us on contents of the Bible, and apparently we know that better than them as well. So the meeting ended after that. I don't think we will be invited to the American Embassy again.
Okay. Yeah, I think international interference happens many times on many issues. In most cases, we never learn about what happened. What I think is so very, very crazy and unbelievable, that children's genitals, the intimate parts of children, has become an international politics issue. I think really that is something we should be aware of. We talk about human rights, and we cannot discuss international political issues on behalf of the children. On their intimate parts pay the price. I think this is something we should really point out. What do you think?
It really is, yeah. And what has been interesting is that recently we managed to get hold of secret government documents from the parliament. So now we can also document not all, but some of the contact that has been between the US Embassy, Israel. Netanyahu has been tweeting about what we're doing in Intact Denmark. That's
Wow.
quite interesting.
Yeah, it is.
And we can document how certain lobbying organizations have been taking an interest in this as well. So it's big politics. And what we're hearing from the parliament is, and what has been confirmed to us by the American embassy, is that there will be sanctions from the US when Denmark passes legislation. And when I ask the Danes, what do you say to that threat that the US and others might sanction Denmark? They say, well, you know, we have our core values in Denmark, and that's the protection of children's rights. If the US sanctions us for that, we're willing to stand our ground. So I'm quite proud of that.
You can be. Human rights against financial aspects. I think we should be on the side of the human rights of the weakest. Wow, this is very, very cool. So Lena, we're coming to the end of our talk, and I have two questions left. The first is the near future of the Intact Denmark's works. What are you planning?
Well, first there will be this voting on the 18th of May. And it may be that it goes against us. Then we have other things up our sleeves because we continue until we win. Secondly, if in fact we win the vote on the 18th, then that leads to a process where the final wording of legislation needs to happen. And then that has to be passed. So it can be years out in the future. And meanwhile, we work to end. Oh, 2 seconds. Meanwhile, we work to end genital mutilation by contact with the parents, and then there will probably, when we pass the legislation, it will probably end up in the human rights courts. So we're expecting this fight to last the next 10, 15 years.
Wow, very cool. And Lena, is the last question now. Is there something you want to add for the audience of the spectators today from all over the world on Worldwide Day of Genital Autonomy 2021?
Yes, and I think that's maybe the most important thing.
Wow, the most important thing must come to the end.
It's what we've done in Denmark and what we are doing can be done in any other country. It has to do with culture, of course, but it can be achieved in any other country. And we will be very, very willing to share all our experience with anyone who's interested. So keep up the good work out there. We're taking our inspiration from all you guys internationally as we go along.
Wonderful. So I think we can conclude that the international allies are very important. So we share our experience about our borders and to conclude that there are no borders. We're together for a common issue. Thank you very much, Lena Nyhus from Copenhagen, and please say hello to all your wonderful colleagues at Intact Denmark. Thank you.
I will.
Bye bye.
Bye
Bye bye.